Alright, welcome to a submission video for the GDQX event taking place at TwitchCon. I'm going to be showcasing the All Keys category of Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. This is the newest category for the game. It's been around for about a year and a half now, and has become one of my favorites, and I would say the easiest to get into category in the game right now. I'd say there's not a single category that's easier to get into than this is right now. So anyway, starting off, if you haven't seen a run within the last couple of months of this game, just in general, you'll notice that I am starting from loading a file instead of new game. And the reason for this is we changed the rules a little while back to allow for the changing of camera customization, audio settings, things like that. However, it sparked up a conversation from about a year ago, well, a year and a couple months ago, where we talked about allowing the skipping of all of the cutscenes in the game, so the animated cutscenes that play after Paris and then before each hub world. Ultimately, through some community discussion and voting between the runners, we allowed the ability to skip the cutscenes to be within our runs. Nothing about the run is altered this way, so like, you know, there's nothing new about the route at all, specifically from the cutscenes being skipped. However, it does make the run a lot shorter and a lot more bearable to reset and just watch in general, because there's, you know, the cutscenes are nice, but after you see them enough times, they become very boring and very bland, and no one likes things that are boring and bland and repetitive, so it's really nice. It has helped to allow the categories to get much more optimized than they were before, at least any percent in all keys. For this category specifically, I've brought the record down about 38 seconds from where it was beforehand, which is actually kind of funny because I think that's the exact amount that I have lowered any percent by. That's quite funny. It's the exact same for both categories. Huh, that's very interesting. Anyway, it has allowed optimization to take place that we never thought would have been doable. Not necessarily because it wasn't doable beforehand, but the overall quality of life of the run used to be so bad at a high level that a lot of the runners, myself included, just didn't like doing the run for more than a couple of hours a day. And you know, if you're only playing for 2 or 3 hours, and out of those 2 and 3 hours, you know, you spend an hour plus watching cutscenes, you tend to not have as much fun, and you tend to not play as well, and you tend to not care as much, and that leads to just poor times overall. And it was just really bad. Something needed to change, and allowing this change has brought forth a lot of new life into the community. Like I said, I've optimized any percent in all keys down. I'm still working on 100%. It's a lot harder to do. It's a lot harder category. And I wasn't the greatest at it beforehand. I feel like I'm a lot better now than I was, though, which is fantastic. Because like I said, quality of life improves the more you want to play it, the better you get, and it just snowballs. We've also had a lot of new people come into the community since we allowed this, and it's been overall, it's fantastic. There's never been a better time to learn this game, honestly, and there's something that I didn't state. I don't know why I grabbed the bottle. I'm autopiloting 100%. That's something that I didn't state. However, I feel like it's even more necessary to state it here in the All Keys video, is that there has never been a better time to learn the game. And with this category having been added within the last year since its last appearance at GDQ, or at a GDQ-based event, this category is so much easier to get into than any percent is. There's nothing ridiculous you have to learn, you just get to play the game. A lot of the early game levels, while there is a lot of skill required to them to do some of the things that you do, for the most part, playing them casually doesn't lose nearly as much time as, you know, not doing a full, you know, hub skip does when you're learning any percent. So I feel like that is the predominant reason why I want all keys to kind of be showcased the most out of all of the 3 categories. I feel it's the better beginner category, and it's just overall much better experience than it used to be, in my opinion, in terms of running. And it's not just my opinion. Lots of people, if you ask them in the community now, agree that the change was very helpful and beneficial. So anyway, it's enough about talking about cutscenes and whatnot. Yeah, there's a lot more to the run than just skipping cutscenes. Here we have a really new strat that was only found. Well, I say really new. It's really new in terms of the game, but it was found about the time that all keys became a category. It was like a month or 2 later after we initially put it on the leaderboards. I found that when you respawn in from any sequence where the camera fades in from the black screen into the gameplay, provided that Sly's character model's flat on the ground, you can time it if you want, but it's a lot easier to just mash the jump button. But Sly will get a huge boost and do kind of like a weird super jump thing. Well, it's not really a super jump. It's more of, because super jumping is an actual technique in this game that we still use in all keys. However, it's a big jump. Big jump. That's the important thing. Like, it's a lot of height. I guess it's another thing that I can talk about here. All keys differs from any percent in that you have to collect all 28 treasure keys throughout the game, and you just beat the game like normal. This doesn't, however, prohibit you from doing any of the skips that are present in the game. We still utilize both hub skips in Mugshot's world, which is the second world. However, that's simply because it's faster than doing the pathing the intended way. It gets you to a level quicker because you're out of bounds already. You'll see what the strat looks like when I get there, and I'll explain it a little bit more there how it works. And then the same thing goes with entering his boss fight in an unintended way. It's faster because you're already over there, so why not do it? There's a cutscene here that kind of just seems like I'm going this way because it's faster, but there's actually a cutscene that's I would say about 3/4 of the way across that bridge, and it spans all the way onto that pipe. So you want to make sure that you are as far right as possible to avoid the cutscene, and you cannot actually go to the left. So there I avoided the spotlight initially because it's faster to run at full speed this whole time after you've already done that than it is to run at full speed for a little bit and get spotted and immediately, and then have to get out of the way and then jump back on and try to get your speed back up. It's just a tiny little optimization, but it's pretty cool, and something that, again, kind of like the cutscene skips, is just overlooked. Other than that, other than having to collect the additional keys, all keys doesn't vary too much more than any percent beyond that. The route is pretty much the same after you defeat Mugshot, but I really feel like these early game levels, at least some of them, the skill set that is required to do these is much different than it is to do the skips, and then to do like the normal hub skips. Yeah, we're gonna get shot here. I messed up, and let's grab the lamp. But then it is to do the hub skips, which is cool. It's a completely different experience in the beginning. Even if the experience is the same afterwards, I feel like it's worth it enough. Getting to see these cool levels, and you also get to see one very horrible level. Not in like a sense that it's like poorly designed or anything, and you get to do cool skips. It's just another awful minigame that you don't have to do in any percent, thankfully. But we get to do it in this category, which is always fun, right? getting to do more things that are questionable amounts of fun are always good. So losing that charm wasn't that big of a deal. If I had the charm, I would be able to use it to damage abuse and skip a cycle in Raleigh's boss fight. Not necessarily skip a cycle, but when you take damage from him, it triggers his like taunting animation, and then after he does that, he immediately becomes hittable, and that's faster than watching him do his actual attack animation. But it requires you having a charm, and even though I have a charm on my back right now, I need this charm in the next level after it to do a skip. And loading the game to get the charm back loses time on doing the skip, so it's only worth doing if you have extra charms to burn. Now you're gonna load this level, or you want to load the game right at the very top of this level to be the most optimal. So long as the submarine gets to touch the like, you know, the sand here at the bottom, the game counts Sly's position, or the game counts that as close enough to trigger the cutscene, because there's a cutscene that spawns here, and it's very long. And for the longest time, I didn't think you could actually load the game to skip this. I just kind of tried it one day, and it worked, and it was like, hey, free time save. It's really weird. Yeah, it's one of those things you just don't think about right away when new categories are spawned up. But this minigame is really not fun. There's a lot of weird things that can happen. For instance, if the crabs have taken the chests a little bit ways into the tunnel, you're actually going to see it right here. Killing the crab will actually instantly break the treasure chest that it has carrying it. So in some cases, it's actually faster to allow that to happen. Yeah, it's extremely risky, but it does save a lot of time, because normally you have to shoot them like 3 or 4 times. It honestly varies. Sometimes it feels like, you know, it's just not consistent. It feels like it's consistent, but at the same time it feels like it's not. And it's very obnoxious when you're trying to, you know, be as optimal as possible. We still have to reset the game here. This is the only downtime in the game anymore. Across any of the categories, you know, sure, there's your auto scrollers and whatnot, but there's always at least something to talk about, at least something to do during the auto scroller. You know, you can't speed it up, but there's always something to be doing. The only downtime now is the resets. We just kind of sit here and wait for the game to load back in, so you can start mashing the start button like there's no tomorrow. No, it realistically doesn't matter how fast you mash it, just so long as you're pressing the start button. But now here we are at the first boss, Raleigh, and just to kind of put it a little bit into perspective, how much time save the cutscenes actually save. Normally you would be fighting Raleigh at about the 16-minute mark originally, and here we are starting the fight at the 12-minute mark. The first 2 cutscenes alone, it's about 2 minutes and 53 seconds. Saved just by pressing the triangle button as soon as the cutscene starts. Overall, throughout the whole run, it saves, on estimate, 7 minutes and 8 seconds. This time does vary slightly though. Sometimes, even though you're mashing the button, the game doesn't recognize that you've skipped the cutscene yet, and will load the first couple of frames of the cutscene. But it's extremely rare when that happens, and you know, it's just a second off of the time save that you get, so it's extremely, it's very not noticeable, you know what I mean? Okay, I think that makes sense.
We're all set to go.
Remember when that was a fantastic hub one? Nice hub one's going that well. But yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's always a good sign. Which means I just jinxed myself by saying that, and this is gonna go absolutely horrible, because that's about par for the course with how my luck works. Anyway, All of the skips so far for this category that have been found are implemented. However, there is one trick in this hub world, and I only just did it on recording in, I guess, like an RTA element. If that makes sense. Like in an RTA-esque form. An RTA essentially stands for you know, doing it like in a run with the timer rolling. Is it something that you can do in a run? Is essentially what RTA stands for. And I actually did it myself on recording in just a normal like segment of the run. I wasn't actually doing a run though, but I was able to perform it, which is great because now that we have recorded proof that the trick can be done by a human, and we hadn't had that before. A few people, myself and a runner from back in the day. He's more of a glitch hunter in our community. Guy by the name is Zuryu. Me and him spent a few hours doing it on the idea that the people who originally ran the game used to do it, even though we could never find anyone. We couldn't find any video proof of it in any runs from back in the day, because old any% from 5-6 years ago used to be the all keys category. We didn't have the hub skips back then, so you would have to do these levels. And we had thought, and we still think that they did it back then. But we don't actually know. we can't find any video proof of it, like I said, and all of the runners we talked to from around that time, none of them remember it. So we just kind of sat there for a few hours trying to find something that we didn't even have proof existed, and we actually did it. Which is it's kind of just a cool story about how we found a trick. Just on the general idea of maybe they used to do this, maybe not. But it's the only trick in all keys that is not implemented yet. And it's solely because I cannot find a consistent way of setting it up myself. I need to stop being lazy bones and figure out a setup for it. Sit down for a few hours, because I feel like it could allow me to push the category down a lot more than I already have. This is actually the first of the shooter levels that you play as in the game. We skipped this level in any% with the hub skip, so we don't get to see this style of gameplay until not necessarily the late game of the run, but I would say like the late mid game of the run. So it's neat to kind of see that. One of the things that's really interesting is Murray is a lot more amped up and ready to go in the cutscene that I skipped there. He's a lot more excited about it, and when we get to the race after this level, he's much more gung-ho about doing the race. And in World 4, which is later on in the game, he's a lot more scared about making the run with the shooter level, and in the race he's a lot more, he's got some confidence, but he's not as, brute forcey with it. Well, I wouldn't say brute forcey, but he's not as overly confident as he is with the dog race. And it's because the second and the fourth hub worlds were supposed to be flip-flopped. Originally, Panda King's world was the second, and Mugshot's world was the fourth. And for some reason they decided to change this, but they didn't actually, I think they changed like the dialogue and whatnot. There we go. This trick is extremely difficult. You have to delay, not delay, but you have to extend your jumps, while also doing a technique we call curl jumping, which is moving your analog stick from a set position to another set position. Kind of like if you were playing like a fighting game. Anyone who's played Street Fighter knows like the movement for like the Hadoken, It's a quarter circle forward on the control stick, right? It's kind of like something similar to that. Like that's the fluidity required. You have to do that while delaying your jump, and you have to hit a ledge grab, all in one motion, and it's fairly difficult for what it like. It looks really simple, but it's incredibly difficult, and is honestly one of probably the only thing in this category that scares me. It isn't present in any percent is that level. Now that's without the 2 to Tango cutscene skip implemented. If I ever get around to implementing that, that will definitely be very difficult. And it's scary because there's so many ways to fail it, and all of them lose a very large amount of time, which is never good. You don't want to have to lose a lot of time, especially not when you're that far into the run. Which I say that far, there's only 2 more levels. There's this racing level, and there's another level after this, and then it's 2 to Tango. So it's really not that far into the run. It's only about 25 minutes, but so 25 minutes is a good bit of the ways in to have your first necessary reset if you don't get a trick. Because that's what that kind of goes back to my saying that this category is a lot easier to learn. There's nothing that's really reset worthy especially when you're learning the game. You only have to all of the mistakes that you make are very small. Nothing is huge to mess up. The majority of what you're doing is just minor sequence breaks that some people probably did as kids, especially if you did the Master Thief Sprint challenges, which are essentially time trials. You had to do minor sequence breaking. Like, they expected you to do a little bit of that to get some of the times, to beat some of the level times, because they're very strict. Some of them are next to impossible if you don't do sequence breaking, and if you're doing that, you already know a good bit of the things that we do. Some of the things are a lot more expert, like that jump there in Boneyard Casino. Both of them, actually. The first one is not as hard. All you do is hug the wall, and you just go right through. They didn't extend the damage plane out far enough, which is really silly. But whatever gets the job done. I keep this last boost here to boost into the cutscene, and it carries my speed over a little bit longer. That's the whole reason. That's the only reason why I keep the boost longer. This level is aptly named Straight to the Key because the MTS strat that we do is it's weird, because you do a bunch of different setup for the MTS strat, because there's a weird thing that's unique to only the MTSs if you're doing specifically ILs that you can abuse. But for the most part, the trick is still the same, in that you can actually activate the cutscene where the wrecking ball comes down and breaks open the key early by abusing a mechanic we call super jumping. And normally this is one of the very first things you have to learn in 80%. You're required to learn it right off the bat in order to run the category. You can just play this level casually if you want. I would say it does lose a decent amount of time, but you're not required to play. You're not required to learn this to play the category. But essentially, what super jumping is, okay, I guess I went too fast. Anyway, what a super jumping is Sly's ground position is set to where he last is before he jumps into the air, and by you can do it with normal timing, but if you swing, it's better. And I swung too late there because I'm trying to explain something. I'm gonna explain it after I do this, because this is taking far too long. There we go. Slud's ground position is set to, you know, a location. You know, like the letter A. When you are jumping and then you swing your cane, it allows you to move along the ground without updating Sly's location, so you can get to, you know, the B location where you're gonna get stuck or where you're gonna take damage. And then once you've gotten stuck or you take damage through falling or water, the game will send you back to your initial position, position A, with all of the collision in the world despawned, just to send you straight back to it as quick as possible. So we can use that to glitch through walls and do things like the Hub 1 and Hub 2 skip, where you hit load triggers that take you to the boss fight early without having to collect the actual keys. You'll see that used again after not this level but the next level, where I'm going to use it to glitch into Mugshot's boss fight early, because it's faster to do that than it is to jump down, run over, activate a cutscene where I unlock the thing to bring the elevator down, then I hit that switch, and then the elevator comes down, and all that is just so much time wasted when you could just, you know, fly through walls and stuff. You know, things that raccoons do on a day-to-day basis. This is one of those, one of the Carmelita chase levels. I almost said Neela chase levels. Because in Sly 2, there's levels where you chase Neela throughout the hub worlds. The main gimmick here is, so long as you're running, you're fine. That clothesline, if you press X too early on it, Sly will just completely fall through it, and it's sad. Very, very sad days. This mattress, if you jump on the very corner of it, you can actually get up. You can, like, you alert the guard, and then before the game can register that you're close enough for him to shoot at, you're already up high enough out of his alert range, and then he runs over to try to figure out where you went. That's how the guards work. Once you break, you know, the sight line of them, you're good to go. They let off of you, so long as you don't run back into theirs or another guard's radius. Normally they're a little bit more aggro-y, but in that particular instance, you get away quite easily. And this level is one of my favorites, and is aside from like Boneyard Casino, the level I said I was kind of afraid of, this is definitely one of the prime examples of a level that has an extremely high skill ceiling. I'm just gonna go ahead and show it off. Dang it. I messed up the first one somehow, and that messed up my timing for the next one. Essentially what you do is you do the inputs for a super jump on those AC units, and it allows you to keep control of your momentum the whole time. But I messed it up there on accident, which is fine. It's not that big of a deal. But here we're doing, if you've seen the 80% category, you know that we go to that corner through the out of bounds glitch I did earlier, where I got catapulted up from the rock. So we're just going to do the same thing, because we end right here and we can get out of bounds that way instead of having to be up top. Initially that was how it was done. We didn't know you could get enough height way back when the skip was first found, and we actually used to only get the half height and would use an ability called roll and land on top of, and there's like a little like hole you can get stuck in front of the casino where like there's the, I want to say it's a peacock sign, but I don't actually know. I might be thinking of Sly 2. But there's a little sign there where you like walk under when you do the level casually, and you break the wooden planks down with the car. You can get stuck above that, and there's a little bit in the ground. There's a little bit up there where you can kind of clip through if you have the roll ability. Oops. I went for a little bit of a risky strat there because I had the charm. Probably shouldn't have, but I don't need the charm for anything, and I'm gonna load the game and get it back anyway, so no harm, no foul. This boss fight overall is pretty simple. A lot of it is just making sure you take the same path every time, and for the most part, Mugshot will do the exact same thing. However, his Mugshot is being a huge nerd today. He decided to do that instead of what he normally does, just to prove me wrong. No. But as long as you're paying attention, even if it doesn't go the same way it normally does, fine.
I figured out a way.
Alright. So this level has a strat that was newly implemented. I don't remember if it was in the run the last time that Sly was at a GDQ event. I don't think it was, but we might have started doing it by that point. Essentially what this jump is a blind jump with a camera change in the middle to a rock that you can't see until you've made the jump. And then a very precise extended double jump with a circle mash to get to that vine, to skip a bunch of platforming. Saves about 15 seconds. There's a different ending you can do there that I don't do because I think it's extremely risky, where you jump down to the tree branch instead of jumping on the trampoline and bouncing up to the vine, which saves another, like I said, about a second and a half, 2 seconds, but I don't think it's worth it. I've seen far too many runs lost to just barely missing the branch and landing in the water, and I'm not about that life. I don't even think the trick itself is necessarily worth it, but at an extremely high level, at the highest possible tier of optimization, it's necessary. But until you are at that absolute highest tier and you're competing for exactly world record, I don't think it's necessary. In my experience, all it is going to do is make yourself not have fun playing the game, and that's not what we're about. We're about having fun. Just to give kind of an example of like the times that you can achieve while I accidentally don't run far enough into the level to trigger the cutscene. My world record for the any percent category is 47 minutes and 47 seconds. My personal best without that trick, which is called DSJ or Dread Swamp Jump, was a 48 minute and 8 second run. I was able to achieve a 48 minute and 8 second run without doing that trick. And that doesn't speak volumes for how unnecessary that is. I don't know what does. I really don't. And that's the thing. There's actually a really cool strat that is a lot easier and gets you a charm that makes the run overall more safe that you can do, and it only loses the 15 seconds. In some of these levels, there's always a better strat, or there's always an easier strat that you can do. It's just great. It's really great, and I wish more people could see that. Understand, not just for our speed game, not just for Sly, but for any speed game, you don't have to do all of super extremely difficult optimal strats especially when you're starting out. Just learn the game and have fun. That's the whole point. That's why we do this. It's all about having fun. And if you're not having fun, then why are you doing what you're doing? Anyway, I'm kind of just like autopiloting here, playing the minigame instead of explaining what's going on. Essentially, this is the second minigame. It's much like the crab minigame, in that everything in here, well, not everything, in this level, all of the fish, where they spawn at, and to a certain extent their movement, is random. And is the biggest element, and actually the only element of randomness in this game, are the minigames, which is really nice. Also, I just made that jump without having to land on the trampoline. And this jump is not difficult, and I don't know why it has been giving me so much trouble recently. This jump has been the bane of my existence recently. I don't know what I've been doing wrong. I thought I had it figured out, but I guess not. But anyway, I actually know you could jump up there without the trampoline. Everyone's been jumping on the trampoline so far, so I wonder if that could be a faster method. It's easy. Just casually finding new optimizations for strats in no reset runs. Love it. No. I don't like this level, this trick. I hate it. It's probably the only trick in the game that I don't like. And I like to coin it as the most inconsistent, consistent trick in the run. Because you can get it every single time, but at the same time, you will never get it every single time. There's so many little intricacies that go into the trick that it's extremely difficult, at least for me, to do it perfectly every single time. And it bugs me, because I hate when I can't do something well. At least to some extent, it really bothers me. And that's just one trick in the game that I cannot do perfect every single time. This is the third minigame. This minigame is down-home cooking. And it's called that because the reason why we're killing all these chickens is the ghost above us wants to make some gumbo. For some reason, I don't know. He's a ghost. I don't really know what he needs to eat for, but I don't know, maybe he's got some living relatives still, and you know, he invited them over for Halloween or something. I don't know. We're just rolling with the theme here. And he's wanting to make them some nice gumbo, you know. He hasn't seen his family in a little while. They're coming over for a nice Halloween party. It's probably a costume party, you know. He doesn't really have to dress up because he's already a ghost. He's got the perfect costume already. Bad jokes are bad. It's honestly my specialty, it seems like some days. But anyway, we're done with that. There's only one more random minigame, and that's at the very end of the run. It's one of the last few levels that you do. However, there is a trick that, while it's not random because of RNG, we cannot do it consistently. We can't perform it consistently. But in theory, there is a consistent setup. I just don't think we'll ever find a way to do it consistently as humans. Because it's done on this vehicle, and if you notice, I'll try to get a better angle of it. If you notice, the vehicle goes up and down on a consistent cycle. And there's, you know, 360 degrees worth of angles you can have. To perform that skip, you like you have a specific angle that you want to get, but you do it by spinning, so you have some form of speed. And you have to hit the proper up and down cycle, and you have to be holding the correct angle on your left stick. And all of these things combine together to make the awful worst trick in the run called spinning that I don't think a single person likes, because it's just awful. You know, no one wants to lose a run, especially a run that, you know, if you've gotten a run to that trick, you're basically nearing the end of the run. And no one wants to lose it. Wow. Okay, Mr. Turtle Man. See, even the Turtle Man, he doesn't even want me talking about spinning. That's how much he's probably lost multiple runs. When I'm not doing runs here, he's probably sitting here playing on his PS2 or PS3 and doing runs in the game that he's in. He doesn't even like it. You know, if the enemies in the game don't like the trick, you know. Pretty sure that should give away just how bad it is. And I mean, realistically, it's not a hard trick. You just sit there and spin in a circle. It's just obnoxious. But there's no other alternative. It saves probably 2 minutes on doing the level the natural way, because it's another one of those levels like that. There's no auto-scroller portions to it, but there's a lot of like going against conveyor belts that are, you know, like conveyor belts moving down and you're trying to go up, and you have enemies to kill, and there's blockades, and it's just no fun whatsoever. That's why we skip it. Unfortunately, we have to skip it doing something that is no fun. So that was Bone Jump, and I love when that trick goes well, because it looks super cool. I messed up my movement at the end there, but that's fine. Normally, it probably looks weird, especially because this is actually kind of a really new route change. It's been, I would say, only a month and a half, maybe 2 months since it was implemented. Bad candle. There's a trick in the first level in Hub 4, found by a runner called Lameke, where you can skip into the hub world without collecting the key in the first level. However, in any percent we need it just to progress, but in this category we need it because it's, you know, the name of the category. You have to go back and collect the key. The only way to do this trick, however, before I found the new setup for it, was you had to have a charm and then burn that charm doing super jumps. However, if you remember me explaining way back earlier, you don't need to take damage to do a super jump. You can get Sly stuck in a position and the game will eventually be like, okay, Sly, you're not supposed to be there. What are you doing there? And it'll send you back where you're supposed to be at, the same way taking damage would. Oops. Which is really cool. So, I managed to find a spot where you could get stuck at that was also, you know, I would say it's about equivalent speed. It's a little bit closer. You don't have to do 4 super jump chains, you only have to do 3. However, you do get stuck for a little bit. It takes about 1.5 seconds for the game to update and put you through the wall. So, I would say it breaks even, but what it does require you to do is not collect that charm there, which means the death abuse that we do here in Ms. Ruby's boss fight to skip the cutscene that plays after you hit her in the first phase. It makes it a lot faster because you don't have to burn the charm and wait for your iframes to go away. And iframes just stand for invincibility frames. It's time after you've taken damage in a game where you can no longer take damage. And I'm behind on the cycle, but that's fine. We can just sit here and wait. I didn't want to ledge grab there. Missed 2 cycles. It's really slow, but oh well. This is Ms. Ruby Skip, and it was found by a runner called Lovable Lamb Chop, who actually did a run in this game at, I believe it was GDQ 2014. And the baseline explanation for it is this water that is below Sly throughout these DDR sections. Well, I call them DDR sections. The game calls it Voodoo Simon Says, but DDR is a lot cooler. Anyway, tangents. All the water that's below Sly, so long as you touch that water, the game thinks and states that if you're in this water, you are in the DDR section. Regardless of where you actually are, you have touched the water, therefore you must be in this section. So what we do is we die in the water, and that sets the game, like it sets, you know, the flag in the game that says, okay, you're in the DDR section. And it's faster. This is a very, very long cutscene that plays after you deal the first point of damage to her, where she explains this mechanic. And that's where, you know, Sly says, "Oh, little voodoo Simon says." But you know, we already know how to play the game, so we don't need, you know, tutorials like that. We're speedrunners. There's not a whole lot to this boss fight. Just after you do the skimp, it's a lot of just mashing. The game likes to drop a lot of inputs, and it's also really hard to time these inputs anyway, as it is. So they didn't put in a check for if you're pressing the button too early, only if you press it too late. So you can just sit here and mash the button, and you're good to go. Now there is a skip here at the very end. There's supposed to be a third phase of this, where you ride on a mosquito. which sounds really cool, and it actually is pretty cool. You're at a mosquito at the top of the chasm or cavern, whatever you want to call it, and you do the same thing, but again, it's just more boring, repetitive nonsense. So her hitbox actually lingers there, so you can manage to hit her twice, killing her a phase early, because she's at half her health there. She has 4 hit points, and even though you didn't technically hit her in the first phase, because you're respawning into the second phase, the game thinks that you must have dealt damage to her and then just died. You must have missed an input or something. So it respawns her with her health lowered, despite having not actually hit her. You can't get extra damage in by hitting her as you fall into the water, because if you hit her as you fall into the water, the game spawns the cutscene and soft locks you. Well, actually, it's a hard lock. You can't get out of the game without restarting the game. Or you can't get out of that without restarting the game. The game hard locks you, and it's a pretty funny hard lock, because it zooms in on Ruby doing her little dance cycle while she's chilling there, and then one of the roosters is right in the front of the screen, and the roosters just look so silly. Because it's the roosters from the chicken mini games, the ones that have bombs on them that run after you, and it's just the best. It's so derpy and silly. I love it. For the most part, a lot of the stuff that is done in these runs is pretty self-explanatory sequence breaking. This is the trick that I was talking about. You start in this corner, and then do the super jump chains. Oh boy, my brain decided that it wanted to stop working there for a second. So let's do this the right way. There we go. And you get stuck up here. Normally you would go over there to the right and fall into the pit there, but this gives you just as good of an angle to do the trick. So you can save time in Ruby's boss fight by not having to have the charm, and it might be a little quicker, but it's definitely faster to not have that charm. However, one of the great things about it is, since it doesn't require you to burn the charm, if you want to play it safe and still grab that charm, you can. It's only about a 5-second time loss grabbing the charm. So if you wanted to grab the charm and then you just have an extra hit for the end game, it's perfectly fine. And something that's really cool, it gives an option to the runner. Whereas before you had to burn that charm, and that could be kind of tough for beginners, you're allowed to bring that charm further into the run now, instead of just having to burn it right away, or just not do the trick if you want it to be safe. This is the second rail shooter, and one of the things I didn't point out in the first one, is that all of these guards spawn in set positions. So if you memorize the locations of all of them, you can actually pre-fire them effectively to the point where Murray won't stop and he'll just keep running at full speed the whole time. Some of them are a lot harder to get the precise angles needed to do that than others are, and some of them, I think this guard in particular is the only one where you can't actually do that, other than this guard, which is, this is a forced encounter. I think you could probably get that one down there quick enough, but this one is a forced one where Murray stops, is the guard just isn't shootable until after he has been spooked, so. And the same with this guard doesn't spawn until after Murray's been spooked. These guys, Murray gets spooked, but it's not long enough for him to stop running more than a frame or two, provided you're really quick on the draw. This section where the guards spawn is completely random. However, the only time loss is if they spawn on the rooftop, and it's very minuscule at best. And realistically, if you're really quick to snap to them, you don't lose any time. But it's a lot easier to adjust to the 4 spawns on the ground than it is to adjust to the 2 on the rooftop. I'm a very expressive person when I talk, and I like that I can do that. Makes it a lot easier for me to explain things. I don't know why I'm like this, but I find it an endearing quality. I think that's how I mean to explain that, right? Yeah. This is my splits dictate in the bottom left. Is the best level in the run. I don't necessarily know if that stands for all keys. I kind of just carry over my splits from 90% when I initially created my all key splits, and then just added in the levels that I didn't do. And this was way back, like a year ago. And now that I've had a lot of time in this category, I really like Boneyard Casino, and I really like Back Alley Heist. And I really like Cunning Disguise as well, from the first 2 hub worlds. So I would say that they are all very heavy contenders for best level as well. It's really cool. There's a lot of really cool sequence breaking, a lot of cool things that you wouldn't necessarily think to do, but when you see it in action, it's like, oh yeah, that does make sense. Jumping on the railing would give you enough height to skip over to the guard shack or jump up onto the ceiling. It's just little things that if you think about it, it's like, oh yeah, that does make a lot of sense. This is another really cool level. I'm gonna try, as I go through here, to avoid coins. No! Oh, I forgot. So, there's an area that's walkable over there, later on in the level. And they didn't want you to, like... Oh man, even just a single jump hits it? Ugh. This is going all sorts of bad. But they made the death plane there, but they didn't think that anybody would ever want to jump off of this pipe here, because why would you? But yeah, just jumping puts you into the death barrier, and it's really stupid because you're in the playable region of the game. You're not doing anything that would be unintentional. But yeah, it's just kind of how it is, unfortunately. That's really sad. I didn't realize it went that far down. I thought it was much further up the death plane, because normally I don't have to jump over those coins. I was avoiding them because I want to collect a charm in the next level after I perform a death abuse, and if I can avoid the right amount of coins, Oh, come on. There we go. I should be able to do it. I don't think 97 is gonna cut it. Well, here. I guess I can just do this. I should have probably just done that to begin with instead of burning 40 seconds next. But I didn't expect to hit that death parry so soon. Oh well. Mistakes happen. So, anyway, with that level aside, I'll explain the coin thing more in the next level. This is the infamous spinning. And hopefully we don't have to sit here for the next 27 minutes. No. I've never seen this trick take that long, but I've had a handful of times where it's taken me over 3 minutes to get this trick. Shooting the door there is kind of like a placebo effect. A lot of people in the community think that not shooting it is the best. A small subset think that shooting it one time is the best. Myself and a couple of other runners think that shooting it twice is the best. And, you know, I have the best times in the category, so in my opinion, you should just shoot it twice. No. Whatever works best for people is what I recommend. And there's a very small portion that thinks shooting it 3 times or more is the best. However, there is a certain amount of times you shoot it before it will break. And no one thinks the trick is doable with the door broken. There you go. I shot once, and then my second shot went off to the side and missed. And then I decided to back up and shoot it the second time, and there we go. I think doing it from a load, honestly, might make the trick more consistent. But again, it's probably just one of those placebo effects. I really don't think that anything can make that trick more consistent. But overall, this is honestly been kind of a bad run. I messed up the trick and straight to the top, which I normally don't do. And then I messed up Boneyard Casino a lot, which it wasn't a lot, but it was enough to make a difference. And to really kind of ruin the run after a really good first world. I messed up a lot of stuff in Hub 3, at least in the one level. There's just been a couple of levels that just went really badly, which I would definitely make sure to not have happen. I don't know why I go for this trick anymore. It's not as hard as you would think, but it's extremely easy to mess up, and messing it up is just sad. You have to go back to the very beginning of the level, and that's like a 40-second time loss for what ultimately only saves 2 seconds. But it does look really cool, and if you're not looking cool while you're doing your speedrun, are you really speedrunning correctly? Like there's 2 things, right? You need to be having fun, and you need to be looking cool. There's 2 things. Provided you are doing one or both of those things, I think you're speedrunning the correct way. The primary focus, of course, being having fun. This little tiny random segment, the icicles she decides to shoot, is random, but it really has no effect on the run unless you absolutely need her to not mess up and shoot something that you're right in front of. Otherwise, the time variance is so minuscule. It's almost not even relevant to think about. But anyway, you saw there I did a death abuse. I kind of glossed over it talking about something else. I did a death abuse there, and then I came up and I broke kind of like a dragon statue and got some more coins and collected a charm. It's important to collect that charm after the death abuse, not only because it's faster, you don't have to take an extra hit, you don't have to wait for iframes, blah blah blah. But it's also important because the end game of this run is incredibly mean, and it likes to just really get you one last time. It doesn't hold any punches. There's you know, it used to be a 3, but it's about a 2-minute 20-second long auto scroller section. The whole time you can die. You know, if you're not perfect with your aim on the owls, they can hit you, and even if you are, sometimes you'll just barely miss and you'll get hit and you'll die. And that's a major thing for newer runners, is Hazardous Path, the first level in Hub 5, is it really gets them. I mean, it even gets veterans sometimes. I've lost a run or two. Even to this day, I've lost, you know, a handful of runs at that level. It's never a good time, no matter what your skill level is. No fun losing your run to the auto scroller. That was race skip. It's become such a predominant thing in the run. I kind of just glossed over it. Essentially, let me do the reset here so I can use my hands to express what's going on here. Effectively, what happens is, think of it like a volleyball net and a tennis court net. And these are the invisible walls. And then there's this free space in between the two walls. You can ramp off of the little slope surface there with a boost, and you can sail in between those two things, in between the two invisible barriers, and drive over to the key, and there's a trigger there that says that the car is there, and essentially, I don't know what it actually states, but essentially, if the car is, or the van is there, it sets Murray to get out and walk over to the key. So I'm going to be a little quiet here and try to showcase a skip in this fight as well. Keep jumping too high. Yeah, I just keep jumping too high. Yeah, I just kept jumping too high. There's a trick here where after you hit Panda King 10 times, he goes into like a flinching state, and then you hit him an 11th time, and he knocks you back. If you do that 11th hit, and at the same time you press square, you press X, Slide does a special attack. Well, special attack animation, where he swipes his cane, but he still jumps instead of doing a jump and then swiping his cane mid-air. So it's got like the normal sweep motion. If you do that, like that particular attack animation, and you hold forward, and then you start mashing the square and X buttons together, you can. The way I think it works is you clip, not necessarily clip, but you get underneath his hitbox. And you get kind of stuck underneath him. So when the game goes to knock you back, instead of knocking you all the way back, it just knocks you straight up into the air. And since you don't go far enough away from him for him to start up his next attack animation, which is where he throws the fireballs at you, he just stays in his cowering state, and you can just kind of wail on him. And you don't have to worry about any RNG on the attacks messing you up. It's like Fiery Wheel, for instance, you have to jump over him, and that lowers your overall DPS on him. And you want to be killing him as quickly as possible. And not only does it do that, but you also don't have to run back up to him. So it saves time there as well. It's honestly a really cool trick. Oh boy. It's a weird little bounce. It was found completely on accident. One of the newer runners to the game was practicing the boss fight, and he was just kind of mashing buttons and got stuck there. And we were he you know, came in my chat while I was streaming and said, "Hey, you know, this thing happened. I don't know what happened. You know, I didn't get knocked back." I think he was doing it while he was streaming, so he had a clip of it, or he was recording it or something. And when he showed me to it, I immediately stopped my run. I was only like 10 minutes in, but I immediately stopped my run and went straight away to trying to figure it out, and we managed to figure out that, you know, quote-unquote setup for it, to make it at least somewhat consistent. It's still extremely difficult to do, especially when you're just, you know, doing the attacks and just trying to count off, you know, 10, 11, and then do the attempts and do it in a fluid motion. Because if you just sit there and kind of wait to try to set it up, it doesn't save any time. You have to do it just naturally while you're doing the fight. However, the one of my favorite things about it is there's no downside. So long as you are quick enough to get back to the jump button, because of how you have to hold the trigger, or have to hold the controller rather. So long as you are quick enough to get back to the jump button, or not the jump button, the circle button, to make it so you don't get knocked back, you know, 3 or 4 levels down, and you get knocked back to the first level, of, you know, like little circle hidey bits. When you were watching, there was little spots where I was hiding. That's how you're supposed to get up to him, is you hide from the fireballs. But anyway, as long as you can get back to that quick enough, it's impossible to lose time attempting the trick. Provided you're not like setting it up. If you're setting it up and then you don't get it, you know, then you lose time, obviously. But setting it up loses time even if you do get it, so there's no reason to do that. Ooh, and that was a fantastic computer there right at the end. But it was pretty slow overall, unfortunately, so. Actually, this is the first time I've done this minigame in a while where they've gotten over 20. Kinda sad. Kind of like a little badge of honor that I hold. It doesn't do anything, you know. They could have gotten 40 computers there, and I could have had the exact same time save, or time loss rather. So now this is the hardest trick in the game. This is called Bentley Skip, and this is the biggest, I would say, barrier of entry in all keys. And honestly, to anyone who would want to learn the game, I would honestly tell them to just not do it. I can't believe I just nailed it like that, especially with that really awkward end setup. That was a little shaky there. But I would honestly tell people to just not even worry about it. It's not required by any means. It just makes the level fast. Essentially what it does is jumping out of that turret and getting proxied up proxies you up and over a cutscene trigger that is essentially a trap that's sprung by clockwork to capture Sly. And it triggers not only that cutscene, but after that cutscene plays, you have to do a hacking level as Bentley. And the hacking level is so slow, it's actually faster that if you do fail the trick and you trigger the cutscene, you enter that level, it's faster to just leave that level and come back to this one. Because you can do that and it'll just respawn Sly back at the normal starting position. And it's faster to do that and attempt the trick a second time. And not only that, if you fail it a second time, it's actually faster to exit that level and come back and do it a third time before it starts to lose time. And it's just ridiculous. The hacking level is so very, very slow, but there's no reason to be throwing runs to something that isn't a required thing. The percentage value doesn't matter for all keys. And any percent, as it says, you know, it's any percent. You don't need to have a specific percent. You can do whatever you want, you know, as much or as little as you need to beat the game. But for this category, the percentage doesn't matter. All that matters is that you've collected all of the keys and then you come and beat the game as quick as possible. So the reason why I say that is entering Bentley's hacking level actually gives a percent for the game. So in 100%, you have to enter the hacking level, and then you come back out and you do Bentley Skip. Because it's still faster, like I said, to enter the level, get the percentage point, and then come back and then skip the hacking level. This is a pretty cool sinking peril, or a pretty good sinking peril. I really like that level when it goes right, because it just looks cool. However, there's a lot of things that can go wrong there. There's a lot of times if you're going too fast, the game can drop an input on you, and if you don't like wait long enough to do some inputs, the game Like you're not like doing too many inputs too quickly, but you still do it like too early, the game will think you're still in the lower section of the game, or lower section of the level rather, and instead of, you know, jumping up onto the rail walk, you'll actually go back down onto one of the hooks and you'll fall in the lava. And all of that stuff is why you want the charm. The turret proxy for Bentley skip, it can throw you into the lava and kill you. If you have a charm, it lets you have another really quick attempt at it instead of having to load the game again. And then my favorite of all the things in the end game, the end game in this game is so brutal. The absolute favorite thing, this next section, Clockwork is gonna shoot a set of 4 purple rings at me, 4 separate times, and after I have flown through the last ring of each of the first 3 cycles, rather, these 4 cycles, the first 3 of them, the last ring can actually bounce back off of the camera and come back on screen. And if I'm not in the perfect spot to go through it again like that, I'll take damage. Because if you notice, when I fly through it, it kind of shocks the outskirts of the ring, or it shocks everything on the outside of the ring. So when it comes back on screen the second time, it does that again, which is no fun. So far we're good. 2 for 3 on no purple rings. And this is the last ring that can bounce back, and we're good. We can no longer get purple rings. Now we just have to do the last skip in the game, which is called Clockwork Jump. And effectively, what it does is it allows you to skip the entire platforming section here at the very end, where you have to, you know, bob and weave through a bunch of lasers and don't trip them, and if you do trip them, make sure you don't die from them. Instead of doing all that, you can just do a really cool extended double jump and press circle on this pipe over here, and just jump up straight to Clockwork and bash his face in, for making us go through all that stress of thinking we might get purple ringed. And there you have it.
It took some tricky maneuvering.
That's the end of the game. We don't do anything specific here. We don't have to wait for anything. Throughout the run, you see all the keys be collected, so there's not something specific you have to wait for. But that is all keys for Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoons. I'd like to thank you for watching the video, checking it out, and give me a chance and whatnot.
Boy, it took a lot of guts for him
yeah,
to get
that's
out
pretty much it.
with me. I know he was
Peace out.
scared, but he's got more heart than anyone I've ever known.